This episode of Help My Business is made possible by Infusionsoft, the world's leading marketing automation software, and the letter E for Ebenius. Coming up on today's show, my life story so far, a resource to help you keep your goals on track, and a big marketing lesson from Dell. I'm Andrew Locke, and this is the show that helps entrepreneurs like you to build a better business. Hello and welcome to a brand new look, a new set, a new logo, and a new me. Actually, it's still me, I promise. So why the change? Well, I started this show in 2008, 7 years ago. I can hardly believe it myself. And of course, a lot has changed in those 7 years. You've changed, I've changed, a lot of things have changed. America was saved by President Obama. Justin Bieber and Miley Cyrus brought a new kind of class and sophistication to the music industry. And thanks to Twitter, we now know what everyone's breakfast looks like every day. When I was a kid, my social network was called Outside. Anyway, going back 7 years, the original name for this show was Help My Business Sucks. But as time went on, I realized that the name had two challenges that I hadn't foreseen. Yes, sadly, my abilities to predict the future have been limited to just two things. First, my successful forecast that England would not win the World Cup, and second, that Starbucks would open at least 11 more stores in North America. Both of those predictions did in fact come true, in case you were wondering. But back to the name. The first of the issues were, based on the content of the show, it really didn't speak to the ideal audience. You see, this show is really designed for entrepreneurs and small business owners who've already had some success and want to take it to the next level. What you need and what I can provide are tips, tweaks, and a gentle probing of your business rather than a full-blown enema. That was the first issue. The second is the word sucks. Now, Americans may not realize this, but the word sucks is in fact very American. And while I do live in the States, the audience for the show is global. So for those reasons, I decided to change the name to Help My Business, which I think better captures the true content of the show. I know change is hard, and I know you might not agree with me, but it's done, and now we move forward. Now, if you're a new viewer of the show, everything I just said probably makes no sense to you, and not knowing any different, you're probably more than happy with the Help My Business name, so at least I can please a few people. I'm excited also to unveil some new features in the show over the next few months, and in this episode you're going to see two of the new segments, one after this segment and one at the very end of the show, so look out for those. So who is Andrew Locke and what is this show all about? Well, I'll start at the very beginning, as it's a very good place to start. I was born at an early age. Don't worry, I won't bore you with that level of detail, but I will regress to my school years for a moment. Obviously, you can hear that I have an accent, and no, I'm not Australian, South African, or Cuban. Those are the three I get all the time. Actually, not Cuban, I just threw that one in there. I grew up in a small town in the south of England, which of course is in Europe, you know, where the history comes from. And when I was a young whippersnapper of just 15, if you're doing a calculation, I'll save you the trouble, it was 9 years ago, I got called into the headmaster's office. That's the principal, quick translation there. And I was literally shaking with fear. I had no idea what I'd done wrong, but I was bracing myself for the worst. The headmaster was a very intimidating fellow with a deep voice, and he sat me down in front of him and he said, "Andrew, I called you in here today because I'm giving you an award as the top student in the school for business studies." Wow, you could have knocked me down with a feather. I was not expecting that. But it turned out to be a light bulb moment for me. Bing! Because I realized at that point I really should put my dream of being a cubicle worker in a big faceless corporation on hold and instead focus on my entrepreneurial skills. Well, if you read my story on helpmybusiness.com, you might remember that while I was still at school, I started a potato round, buying big sacks of potatoes from a local farm and then selling small bags of those potatoes from door to elderly people in the community. They were happy, the old people, not the potatoes, because they hated carrying those bags of potatoes home from the shops. And I was happy because I was making 10 times as much as my school friends who were doing paper rounds for 1 measly pound a day. £1! You couldn't buy half a toothbrush for that now. Anyway, after I left school, I got heavily into video production and I loved it. I still remember my first video camera because it was the exact one that Michael J. Fox used in the movie Back to the Future. Yep, Michael walked off the set, he handed it to me and said, "Make movies." He didn't really. He said, "Hold this, I need to use the bathroom." But what a great movie that was. I love that movie. One of my all-time favorites, in fact. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. With my bright red Michael J. Fox video camera, I started filming weddings and events and all that kind of thing for friends and family. And I also tried an assortment of different jobs as an employee. And I quickly discovered that I was not good employee material. That's putting it mildly. I was as out of place as a vegan at a barbecue. Anyway, around that time, I also spent a lot of time at both the library and in used bookstores. Love those places. I had an insatiable thirst for business and marketing knowledge. Unfortunately, I picked up books from some of the greats, like people like Dan Kennedy, J. Abraham, Claude Hopkins, Eugene Schwartz, and others of that ilk. Can't believe I just used the word ilk in a sentence. Now, of course, a lot of what these people taught was quite radical. It was very different from what was being taught in colleges and universities. In fact, very different from what they still teach now. But I instantly saw how being different was better. After all, that's what marketing is supposed to be about, to stand out from the crowd in a sea of sameness, right? Well, I made a lot of mistakes too. I didn't know what I didn't know, and being young, at times I was definitely overconfident. I got into a lot of debt, and debt is like quicksand. It's very easy to get into, extremely tough to get out of. But by trial and error, and more error, I realized ultimately that in business, everything is marketing, and marketing is everything. Marketing is absolutely central to the success of any business because every other activity can be traced back to marketing. That's a bigger topic for another episode, another time. But just to finish the story, in the late 1990s, I created my first information product and I sought the endorsement of a very well-known celebrity in England called Paul Daniels. If you're a US viewer, Paul is like the Jay Leno of England. He's a household name. Been on the BBC for more than 15 years in that prime time slot of Saturday evenings. And I contacted Paul, and to my amazement, not only did he agree to help me, but he ended up mentoring me for 2 days a week for more than a year. I subsequently ended up helping him with his marketing, and a few years later after that, in a bizarre turn of events, I ended up being his personal manager, which was really surreal. Well, we had a lot of fun coming up with creative and crazy marketing ideas, and although Paul still does some TV today, he eventually scaled back and he's mostly enjoying his retirement. In 2003, I moved to the States, first to California, Orange County, the OC, and then to Utah. And the first person I came across in this newly born world of internet marketing was a chap by the name of Yannick Silva, a Russian immigrant who had blazed a trail in the early days of making money online. Now, I'd heard that he was doing an event in Washington, D.C., the first of its kind, and I really, really wanted to go, but I just couldn't afford it. But what I did was I wrote to him and I offered a trade. I said, "How about if I film your event in return for a ticket?" Well, to my surprise and delight, he said yes, And while I was there, this whole new amazing world of making money online opened up to me. I nervously purchased a training course on my credit card, even though I couldn't afford it, and I quickly got down to business by devouring every word of the course. And then, of course, I applied what I learned. And that's how I made my very first dollar online. And in that same year, I ended up developing a unique system for getting traffic from eBay that any business can use. Well, a year later, after that first event with Yannick, I was back there again at the next event, but this time I was presenting on stage to explain how my eBay system worked. That was a real thrill, and I'll never forget it. Since that time, I've created a variety of training products, courses, events, and of course this show, all with the aim of helping small business owners and entrepreneurs to build a better business. In 2008, this show went to the #1 spot on iTunes. I built a beautiful new TV studio in Salt Lake City, and I've also been able to travel the world, which is another one of my passions. So that's my story, and I don't think I've ever told it in that way before, so I hope that was interesting to you. And if anything, I really, really hope that you can see that anything's possible. Dream big, the sky's the limit, and have fun in what you do. Before we move on with the rest of the show, I'd like to take a brief moment to tell you about our sponsor, Infusionsoft, who make it possible to bring this show to you for free. Before I started using Infusionsoft, my business was a disorganized mess. And as soon as I changed to Infusion, it's revolutionized my business in so many ways. Infusion manages marketing campaigns to keep in touch with customers. It keeps track of my affiliates. It handles all the emails and, of course, the customer database. There's nothing else out there to match it because it was built by marketers for marketers. Now that's a lot to take in. So the friendly folks at Infusionsoft offer a free demo so you can better understand how to use it to systemize your business. So I encourage you to visit the infusionsoftdemo.com or click on the link in the show notes below. Now, Ask Andrew will still be a feature of the show. That's the segment where viewers write in to ask me questions. But in this episode, I'd like to introduce a brand new segment called Points to Ponder. I'm very excited to unveil a new segment for you, and this is a segment where we'll consider a thought-provoking quote that relates to this wonderful world of business and entrepreneurship. Now, this quote is from John O'Toole. He was an advertising genius who wrote the book, The Trouble with Advertising. Here's the quote. He says, "When executing advertising, it's best to think of yourself as an uninvited guest in the living room of a prospect who has the magical power to make you disappear instantly." I love this quote. It really emphasizes the importance of standing out from the crowd. Of course, you need to attract attention, and you need to make an irresistible offer and do it in an interesting and engaging way. You see, most ads these days, they try to be too clever. They try to win awards rather than customers. Honestly, when was the last time you remember an ad campaign that grabbed your attention and got you to take an action that you weren't previously planning to take? I came across one the other day, and the fact that it's in a foreign language adds even more weight to how good it is. It's called The Great Escape, and it ran in Switzerland. Take a look.
Guten Morgen. Allegra. Willkommen im Bündnerland. Ja, guten Tag, schöne Frau. Guten Morgen.
Morgen, Bro.
Hey, Allegra. Ist kurz Zeit? Ja, du. Hallo.
Hallo. Ist das wirklich live, oder? Ich glaube schon, ja. Jolalalaiti.
Darf ich einladen?
Ja, privat.
Um das 4 Uhr da, Freund. Einladen, das Billett draussen.
Echt?
Ja,
Okay.
ist gültig heute.
Nur heute.
Heute habe ich nicht Zeit.
No, I'm saying komm zu ihm.
Jetzt gerade.
Das ist ein bisschen spontan. Danke vielmals.
Jetzt müsst ihr einfach auf den Zug.
Okay. Ja. Tun Sie mit meinem Chef reden?
Ja, da muss doch geschwind anrufen. Das ist nicht so wichtig mit dem Chef.
Ist gut.
044.
446.
Das ist Mann. Der kommt heute Nachmittag nicht in die Schule. Dann kann ich auf die rechnen.
Ich weiß es nicht.
Das ist mit Kinderkrippe da. In einer Viertelstunde fährt der Zug.
Shit.
Das lange gerade noch.
Also dann bis nachher.
Ja, dann kommen wir.
Ja, ist gut.
Bis nachher.
Also wir kommen.
Hey, super. Ja, das ist super.
Tschüss.
Hey, ciao. Ja, hallo. Hey, willkommen.
Hallo, danke.
Gute Reise.
Ja?
Ja, das ist gut.
Hey!
Perfect.
Brilliant, isn't it? It stopped people in their tracks and made a lot of them change their minds about what they would do that day. That's effective advertising. So again, think about what we just discussed in the context of the quote again. When executing advertising, it's best to think of yourself as an uninvited guest in the living room of a prospect who has the magical power to make you disappear instantly. And now it's time to share one of my favorite internet resources with you. Do you ever set goals but then struggle to keep them? I know I do. Well, there's another opportunity for you and I to keep our goals on track with stick.com, spelled with 2 Ks. It's a free service that first asks you to enter your goal, and then you set the stakes, which is the whole point of this method. You see, researchers at Yale who put this site together realized that most people don't have any accountability with their goals. Stick aims to fix that issue by asking goal setters to make a commitment contract as part of the process. It's an interesting idea. They've got some great case studies and success stories, and you just never know. By this time next month, you may finally be able to stop biting your nails or whatever else it is that you're doing that you want to stop doing, or maybe start doing. If you like this resource, don't forget to let me know in the comments at helpmybusiness.com. And if you're a fan of these nifty clicks, consider joining the community of fellow nifty clickers at niftyclicks.com. It's a members-only website with a constantly growing collection of little-known, undiscovered resources, and each one is explained with a helpful video tutorial. Click the link below this episode in the notes at helpmybusiness.com and you can try it out. This week's big marketing lesson is from Dell, the computer company. Now, Dell have obviously been around a long time. They're the old age pensioner of the computer world, in a good way. I recently received this brochure in the mail, and they've used a device that I call bragging rights on the front cover here. Now, bragging rights is where someone buys a product partly because they know that they'll be able to brag about it to their friends. In this case, the offer is, be the first to get Windows 10. And they really nailed it with that statement because it directly pushes the bragging rights button. Ding, 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 ding. Now, you may not have even been thinking about buying a new computer, but when this flyer lands on your doorstep and you read the invitation to be one of the first, it gets you thinking. Then, as you turn the pages and you see all those photos of thinner and lovelier computers, it's pretty much game over. You're gonna buy, or at least a lot of people will. So how can you adapt this concept of bragging rights in your business? Well, it's really a question of thinking about what you can offer that would make your potential customers go, ooh or ah. See, we've already seen that being one of the first to get something is a big motivator to buy. Another factor that you can use is exclusivity. As an example, consider this whiskey supplier. They make just 275 bottles of a whiskey called Highland Park. It's 50 years old, the bottle is handcrafted from sterling silver, and even touching a bottle of that would give you bragging rights, wouldn't it? Ooh, I touched it. Now, interestingly, this concept of bragging rights is especially popular among people who are ridiculously, obscenely wealthy, those who have more money than a Mexican drug dealer. Many of these jet-set billionaires of the world are constantly looking for ways to impress their friends and up the ante. For example, the Sultan of Brunei owns a 747 jumbo jet that's so blinged out with $120 million worth of gold that even Donald Trump is jealous. And then there's Ho Hung's son, a casino owner from Macau. He purchased 2 truffles, aka a lump of fungus, for $330,000 at an auction in London. I don't know about truffles, to me they look more like rabbit droppings. So you can see that bragging rights will make people do really quite stupid things. So what examples of bragging rights have you seen in marketing? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about that below this episode at helpmybusiness.com. Please comment and share your opinions about any aspect of this episode. I'd really love to hear from you. If you'd like to rent my brain to help you directly to build a better business, click on the link in the show notes below. I'm often referred to as the Yoda of marketing, not because I'm short with green pointy ears, but because of my encyclopedic knowledge and experience with marketing. Don't forget to share your experiences about the bragging rights concept, and if you enjoyed this episode, please tell a friend about it. I'm assuming that you do have friends. One way to spread the word is to leave a comment on iTunes, which I would greatly appreciate. Thank you for doing that. Join me again next time for a terrible ad from UPS, a new segment called Internet Intervention, and a big marketing lesson from In-N-Out, the burger chain. Remember, as always, everything is marketing, and marketing is everything. And finally, as a new feature, I'm going to leave you with a what were they thinking moment. What were they thinking? Knowing that you can choose any name for your business, why, oh why, did this pizza restaurant use this name? Yes, it's real, and no, I have not eaten there. See you next time.